This is CNN Newsroom live from Los Angeles. Ahead this hour, the US moves closer to the biggest tax overhaul the country has seen in more than 30 years, and an overwhelming number of Americans don't want it. Joining us here now in Los Angeles, CNN's political commentators, Democratic strategist Dave Jacobson and Republican consultant John Thomas. Also with us, political analyst Peter Mathews. Thank you all. Welcome to the new configuration. I hope it wasn't too off-putting. Okay. It's not easy for a tax cut to be unpopular, but this one is. According to the website 538, the November average approval for the Trump tax cut was 32%. Go back to 1993. A tax increase by President Bill Clinton was more popular at the time. So, John, to you, I mean, it could be true that Paul Ryan says it's all this negative coverage about the plan, all this bad coverage that it's getting about how it will impact the middle class and the working poor. Or maybe it's not the coverage, maybe it's the fact that it's a bad plan.
I think there's two things. Number one, I give credit to the Democrats. They got the jump on the Republicans at framing this issue, that it's for the millionaires and the billionaires, not the 80-some% of Americans who are going to see up to a $2,100 a year tax cut. That narrative was lost in this discussion. Also, the challenge is the messenger. Donald Trump's approvals are low, and it's a president who sells these things. So if he's not a popular figure saying, believe me, trust me, this is a good package, it's hard to sell it. So Republicans, what we're betting on, and I think this is a great bet for the midterms, is the proof's in the pudding. If middle America does in fact get a tax cut and see more jobs and the economy continues to grow, that's a win for us.
Dave, is it a problem about selling the tax cut, or is it a problem that an average household gets what, $900 a year on average, and someone who earns more than $1 million gets close to $70,000 a year? Even as a percentage, that's 3% for someone over $1 million bump in their pay or whatever, and for the average household it's 1.6%.
Here's a third problem. The Republicans can't guarantee that every middle-class family actually gets a tax cut. Like, they can't guarantee that. This actually raises taxes on millions of working-class families in California, New Jersey, and in New York.
It puts a spotlight on states that have outrageous tax structures and said the federal government is no longer going to subsidize out-of-control states like California.
Here's the problem. This bill is the embodiment of why we have a rigged economy. It gives massive tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires and Wall Street corporations, precisely the folks that Donald Trump campaigned on that he was going to crack down on.
80% of Americans get a tax break. Is that okay?
Look,
80%.
It actually gives tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires, and it doesn't cut taxes for every middle-class family. And that's why Republicans lost the message war.
Let me put this on a slightly different plane. This is the competing vision of Reaganomics versus supply-side economics versus Keynesian economics. Reaganomics on the supply side says if you cut tax on the wealthy, they will invest the money and it'll grow the economy. But the problem is the wealthy people quite often invest in stock market or in overseas enterprise to make more profits. They don't create jobs here. It's been proven in the past with Reaganomics. But then the Keynesian economics with President Roosevelt is to stimulate the economy by spending money and, in fact, giving working people more of a tax cut rather than the rich.
Because they spend it all.
Yeah, they spend it all, and they demand more.
And John, the problem is that what we're talking about here about a $900 a year tax break on average. Barack Obama, when he was president, cut payroll tax by about the same amount to stimulate the economy, and that pretty much went unnoticed. So, I mean, there is that danger that people could get this in their paychecks and not even feel it.
Well, I mean, you look at South Dakota, for instance. I think the median house income is like $57,000 a year. They're on average are paying, I think, $800 a year, $800 in taxes. They would not only they would be getting that, if not more, back. I mean, that's a lot to a middle-class family. Perhaps not us on the coast where our costs are higher, but everyday Americans, I think they are going to feel it. And the other thing we're hoping they're going to feel is the economy it's already humming along, but you're hearing estimates from the New York Fed of 4% GDP. That does trickle down to hiring more people.
The individual tax cuts expire in 2025. Yeah. The corporate ones remain permanently. That's the problem.
Well, that's right. But Paul Ryan said they're going to make that permanent, just like they made the Bush tax.
Well, we hope so. But the people see that, they wonder if that.
And they would have made them permanent, but the rule structure was they couldn't do it and get this passed.
At least now, Donald Trump and the Republicans, they've got something to boast about. It may not be the best tax bill in the world, but they've got something to go back and talk about. And even though the economy continues to improve, it's not helping Donald Trump and his poll numbers. So it's kind of a give and take.
Right, because like at the end of the day, the president's toxic. Any way you look at it, these tweets, the Russia investigation, the fact that he lies to the American people on a regular basis. You've got scandal after scandal. Donald Trump is his own worst enemy. But the fact of the matter is, going back to the tax bill, Donald Trump said that he wasn't going to get a tax cut. Forbes magazine magazine put out an estimate today that according to Donald Trump's taxes that were released in 2005, he's going to get an approximate $11 million tax cut. So we're talking about $900 for an average middle-class family across America, excluding the coasts. The fact of the matter is the president's going to get $11 million.
Oh.
Is he going to invest that in job creation? That's a big question.
What would you do with $11 million? Okay, when the Obama administration passed health care along party lines, similar to this tax cut, Obamacare was fairly unpopular at the beginning. The Democrats argued it would gain support over time as people enjoyed the benefits. Republicans are making a similar argument now for this tax plan.
Mr. Speaker, does the lack of Democratic support mean that this tax overhaul is vulnerable the same way that the Affordable Care Act was vulnerable and ultimately going to be changed today?
I think the comparison is a non sequitur because the Affordable Care Act proved to be extremely unpopular. The Affordable Care Act proved to reduce health care choices, to raise premiums, to make health care unaffordable. This is going to do the opposite. This is going to grow the economy. It's going to increase paychecks. It's going to increase take-home pay. And that, I believe, is going to be very popular.
John, Obamacare was very popular towards the end, but it took years. So there's a danger here for the Republicans, if they're relying on this model, that it could take a long time before people actually feel the benefits and, thank the Republicans.
It's possible. I believe this tax cut will affect Americans for their 2018 returns. So hopefully Americans will start to get those reductions, the 80% of Americans, as they go into the ballot box.
But Peter, overall, is it Trump's core supporters who are left worse off by this plan?
Many of them are, actually, and if you look at history, there were tax cuts, the same type of tax cuts engineered back in the 1890s and in 1920, again in 1981 under President Reagan, and then in 2000 under Bush. Every time they had these tax cuts, mostly on the super wealthy, we were followed by a recession, a Great Depression, a Great Recession, and a Great Recession. So that was a problem, and a lot of people, even including the Trump supporters, will say, this doesn't seem to be working out for us. And I think that John may be a little optimistic that it'll happen really soon for them. And when they see the tax cuts expiring, but the corporate tax cuts remaining, they're going to lose faith.
Well, that's the big issue. It's Robin Hood in reverse, right? By 2027, we could increase taxes on hardworking families by $80 billion.
Said that they will make them permanent.
But it's an interesting way this has been engineered too. Like you get these perks at the beginning, and then they slowly sort of trickle away to nothing at all, years down the line. Right. What was interesting also is that last week lawmakers added a perk into this tax plan, which was especially beneficial for anyone in real estate. Anyway, but there's also a lot of other people.
They're calling that the Corker.
The Corker kickback. But, but Corker isn't the only one. Listen to this.
There's about 14 Republican senators, that's about a quarter of the Senate Republican Conference, that have investments in LLCs and real estate-related partnership investments in which they stand to make big money off of a provision inserted into the bill in the conference committee.
And clearly, John, the president is no stranger to property development. How's that drain in the swamp working out?
I mean, there's no question this is not a perfect bill, but like Obamacare, the Democrats would argue it wasn't a perfect bill either. But we had to get something done.
Right.
Sometimes you have to horse trade. Look, it's like the carried interest loophole. Why in the world is that still in this bill? But somehow it is.
Okay. Dave, given the administration has been caught up in a string of scandals, cabinet secretaries, flying private jets all over the place. We saw the Treasury Secretary and his wife, with the new printed sheet of dollar bills there with their gloves looking like Bond villains. There is a perception here within this administration that, this isn't exactly draining the swamp.
This is corrupt politics at its worst. At the end of the day, you've got Donald Trump who campaigned for the little guy, for middle America, for folks who feel disenfranchised, and he's giving giveaways to wealthy Wall Street investors and corporations and millionaires and billionaires, and he's not really doing anything to create jobs and grapple with income inequality. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Donald Trump's not doing anything for the poor, at least not through this tax bill.
And Peter, Donald Trump could actually, prove that he is worse off under this plan if he released his tax returns.
Release his tax returns, exactly.
But he won't do it.
But he won't do it. There must be something that's holding him back from doing that. My question is, what could that be?
There's no doubt that he's a successful business person. He has a lot of property interests. Of course, he's going to make more money, just like successful entrepreneurs should make more money. They pay more taxes.
But John, why not release them? Why not release the tax returns? What's he holding him up for that?
Obviously, it's counter to the broader narrative that he's trying to put forth about the 80% of Americans that do get relief.
Okay, on the same day that the president gets a very... Okay, let's go to the Senate right now because they are wrapping up the vote, and this is an historic moment, regardless of how you see it or your point of view.
Mr. Young.
Dave, have been casting a vote. This, is pretty much procedural now because we know that the bill should actually pass without any hurdles.
You know what's remarkable about this is that not a single Democrat is voting for these.
Why is that remarkable?
It's remarkable because Democrats are going all in on the fact that this will fail. Yeah. If this succeeds, it is a clear path for the Republicans to succeed in the midterms in 4 years from now, because there's not one Democrat. I mean, they were so against this. Now, of course, if it fails, it's a good point.
But Dave, do they campaign on tax cuts? Because it's very hard to campaign against a tax cut. It's much easier to campaign on Donald Trump and Twitter wars and misogyny and attacks on minorities.
I don't think Democrats are against tax cuts for hardworking families or the poor. They're against tax cuts for Wall Street and for corporations and for big pharma and for big establishment interests, the wealthiest individuals in this country. And so what Democrats are going to do is they're going to shine a bright spotlight on how terrible this bill is. And look, Democrats don't even have to do that. At the end of the day, the American people don't support this bill. This is the most unpopular tax cut bill we've ever seen in modern America.
Peter?
The numbers are staggering. 66% don't support this bill, and it's because of the fact that it benefits just the top few. And again, I go back to economic development. Is this going to help the economy or not? It can't help the economy unless especially the cuts in programs that actually will spread the money around and create more demand.
The other issue too, that this is a tax cut this is a deficit-driven tax cut. And John, if you cast your mind back to when President Obama was in office, and at a time when the economy was stalling, in deep trouble, and that when you traditionally have a stimulus package or a tax cut because that's the only spending, the only stimulus left to the economy, Republicans opposed any kind of deficit spending. But now they're okay with this one. These guys who said, the deficit's evil, but now it's okay.
Well, because they didn't see a growth solution out of the deficit spending. This is more akin to what happened with Reagan, where we had a spending problem, but the revenue to the government increased after the tax cuts. It's like that's what they're looking at, and then the next thing we have to tackle is spending.
And that's the thing too.
We're talking about the second Reagan tax cut. The first one, 81, actually did not increase revenue. That made a bigger deficit.
We're talking about the
second one that sought to fix the first one.
And then we fought the Cold War, drove up our spending.
The debt went way up.
Yeah, but Dave, you see what happened. With the deficit goes all the way up. It inflates the deficit, and then we start hearing already from the Republicans that then means cuts to entitlements to cover the costs of the deficit. So you have a situation where you get these corporations that are getting billions of dollars in tax breaks. People earn $1 million or more, walking home with tens of thousands of dollars extra in their pocket. But I'm sorry, we'll have to cut Social Security and Medicare to pay for it.
Precisely. This is the embodiment of, I think, extreme hypocrisy by Republicans. In 2010, they campaigned against Barack Obama. They campaigned against the deficit. And the fact of the matter is they're adding $1.5 trillion to the deficit. And you're right. They want entitlement cuts at the end of the day. But those are going to impact middle class and poor families. And that's an issue that Democrats have to hold Republicans' feet to the fire.
I think the difference is, Dave, Republicans trust Americans and American business owners, American working families to deploy their capital that we're giving back to them to create more jobs.
Then why not require it, John? Why not require in the legislation that they should spend it on investment?
No, because that's exactly right. We trust that they'll spend it better than the government.
We have to wrap there. The only problem was that when Gary Cohn, the economic advisor, was in a room full of CEOs, and he said, "Who's going to reinvest this money?" No one put up their hand, because they're all going to use it as a share buyback scheme or send it overseas. Okay, Peter, David,
Thanks,
John. Thank you very much. Good to see you guys.